Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Go Wild. Now, the Go Wild app has added some really cool and exciting functionality to their app, and the first one I want to talk about is the Near Me function. And basically what this does, it allows you to engage and connect with people in your area. You guys can talk about gear, you guys can talk about hunting areas, you guys can talk about what's going on in the woods, and it just allows the users to be more of a community and connect easier. The second part is the Gearbox, and what the Gearbox is, it is an opportunity for the users to not only see reviews on products and see what the Go Wild community is using in the field, what products they're using, but it also allows you guys to purchase up to 150,000 products. There's a shopping function on it. So check out the Go Wild app. If you haven't downloaded it to your phone yet, you need to, and you can do that at any app store that is currently available. Go Wild. It's an awesome app. Check them out.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. This week, we're putting it in a little bit different gear, and I've got my buddy Josh Spielmaker, Malachi Nichols, and Ben Lagrone at the global headquarters. We have a pretty enlightening discussion about how Malachi gave me the stiff arm on going in partners on a boat. We talked about the Gary Newcomb Hunting School of Hard Knocks summer camp that Josh Spielmaker attended. And we talk about building family culture. Building family culture. In a time of crisis and instability, I think the response of anybody to the people that they love is to build stability for them. And so we have a really fun conversation about building family culture and what that means, values, philosophies, culture. And I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. We just went to print with the July-August issue of Bear Hunting Magazine. It is a great issue. A lot of great articles, some llama articles, a lot of hound stuff. We even teach people how to make some bear hide chaps. Anyway, check out Bear Hunting Magazine. You can subscribe to Bear Hunting Magazine, get it 6 times per year, mailed to your door. Incredible, incredible thing. Hey, hope you enjoy this podcast. We are at the Bear Hunting Magazine global headquarters. I know all of you have been here before.
Yeah.
Yes, at one time or another.
This has Ben's first time on the podcast, though. Well, and Malachi's first time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But not Josh's first time. Well, hey, we're at the Bear Hunting Magazine Global Headquarters. Did you guys notice anything new in here?
It kind of smells like mothballs.
Okay, that is new.
Is that snake deterrent?
I feel like the moths are trying to get to my bears. Okay, guys, it's a little more obvious than what you're feeling.
The table.
The table.
Okay.
Look at that table.
Fox hunting table. I love
Look
it.
at that. This is like a card table.
Yeah, that's cool.
I bought this at an antique store.
Okay.
And it's probably a 2 by 2, 2.5 by 2.5 square table with fold out legs. And it's old. It's got to be
old.
Very old. And it has this beautiful old painting of a fox hunting scene, certainly from Europe. And it's like got all these running walkers and these guys on horses. And I like that this lady's like bringing her man some food here. You see that? I told Misty, I said, I mean, you could bring me food while I was riding my mule if you wanted to.
Are you going to put a thatched roof on your house too?
Thatched roof. But so when I saw this, like, I was like, this is the foundational stuff from where we get our hound hunting culture in North America. Is from the European hunting culture. And I'm sitting there in this antique store looking at this, and it's like this rich cultural scene. I mean, I like it. Like families are involved. Think about the guys that bred. I mean, there's like 25 dogs there. Those horses had to be trained. They weren't just born trained. Somebody trained those horses. Somebody developed a craft. Somebody bred those dogs. That the families, the how, and that, my friends, is no longer in existence for the most part. The European hound hunting culture is gone, essentially gone. It's still there. I'll have people write in and say, "No, we still hunt," and they do. There's a few, but in general, it is gone. So, I came back, talked to Colby about it, told him what I saw. And I went back and I bought this. And do you know what I'm going to do with it? We're actually using it as a table here today. I got all my podcast stuff set up on it. It looks like a picture frame, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so the tabletop looks like a
Right.
picture frame. I'm going to take the legs off of that thing because I don't really need a table in here, even though it's kind of convenient. And I'm going to put it as a picture right above your head. Do you see that? So if the guys are looking up, right there.
Oh, real on the ceiling
On the ceiling.
of the loft here.
So there's going to be a big painting of this European hound hunt on the ceiling, the Bear Hunting Magazine Global Headquarters.
Now, why the ceiling?
Oh, he teased me up. I didn't tell him. Malachi's like confused. He's like, why the ceiling? So that people walk in here and say, why is that painting on a ceiling? And I'm going to say, because they didn't guard the gate.
Oh,
They didn't guard the gate.
yeah.
That scene is no longer on the earth. It's not on the flat wall. I got pictures all in here
Yeah.
of all this hunting, all this culture, all this life, all this shared experience. And this is still here. We can still hunt deer. We still quail hunt. We still ride our mules and bear hunt. But that, they don't. And I want my children to be able to jump on a mule and go coon hunting. So it's going to be there as a symbolic gesture to we better guard the gate. Do you know what guard the gate means, Malachi? Ben and Malachi aren't.
No.
Okay.
Explain.
Essentially, guard the gate is a phrase that we use, Bear Hunting Magazine, to say that the bear hunting is the entry point for the anti-hunting community to come into the North American space of hunting. Like, they're not after the quail hunters. They're not after the deer hunters.
Right.
It's the bear hunters. And it's also the hound hunters. Like, hound hunting is an easy narrative for people to twist and for someone to not understand.
Right.
And so that is the easy place for the anti-hunting community to come in and twist the narrative and say, these are barbarians. This is an outdated, irrelevant practice. And the anti-hunting community's whole strategy is incrementalism. Like, they're picking off one thing at a time. So much so, like a frog in boiling water, you don't realize it until you wake up and you're 70 and you can't do what you used to could do. And so it's a pretty big. We talk about that a lot because the hunting world has sort of been ignored, or the bear hunting world, excuse me. And so what we're trying to do is build this strong narrative of ethics, conservation, humane harvest, like all these things, like why bear hunting is no different than any other type of hunting, and how harvesting wild game is no different. In fact, more humane than the bacon that we just ate in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you live in a glass house. If you think that bacon was ethically and honorably raised and harvested.
Yeah.
I
Free
mean,
range.
and people don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but then they might say they have a problem with me going and killing a bear.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, we got to guard the gate because that doesn't make sense.
And to your point, Clay, just thinking about the origins of kind of our hunting tradition, even to date, when you look back at historical references like this, it's not there anymore. And all those things have died off. So if we don't do something now, we would logically have to expect that the traditions we have now will die off.
Right. Right. Well, we live in the very nature of the earth today is one of massive increase of communication. Used to, things could hide in the shadows and kind of just be out of sight. Not anymore. Social media is wreaking havoc on a whole lot of stuff, not just hunting, but it's like showing the world. And so globalization, like people from all over the world follow social media from North America. And the answer is not to quit putting stuff on social media. Part of the answer is don't put stupid stuff on social media. Don't put fringe stuff that doesn't happen very often. And that's just the very nature of the problem, is that when something sensational happens, like in a hunting situation, like say, that's what you want to talk about, because the other 400 days that you went hunting, that didn't happen. And so you put this sensational thing on the internet, and then that brands the whole scene. Right. And so, we do have to, part of guarding the gate is having wisdom with what you put on social media about hunting, because every facet of hunting, every facet of farming, every facet of driving a car down the road, can have a bad narrative. People die and crash. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like putting a picture of a crashed car and someone injured in a photo and put it on social media, and then the world saying cars are terrible. Mm-hmm. Cars kill people. Well, yeah, they do, but most of the time they don't. You with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much. There's just so much information.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much information out there that it's like anything we see now has to be sensationalized for it to get our attention.
Yeah, it's true.
Clickbait, man. Clickbait.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. I really didn't intend for. I love it. I had to tell y'all about my table, though. This is going to be major. This is going to be a major addition to the bear. So, hey, let me introduce my guests. Okay. I'm gonna give a short introduction, then come back and give a longer introduction. So I have Josh Spielmaker. Josh has been on the podcast before. Josh is like, well, I'm not gonna talk. I'm gonna give you an introduction. And then we have Malachi Nichols. Malachi, longtime friend, but you've never been on the podcast.
Nope.
Okay. And then to my left, Benjamin Lagrone.
Woo!
Ben's waving to the crowd. Now Ben has never been on the podcast, and there's different reasons why I have you guys on this podcast, because we're all at different stages of life.
Yeah.
Except for Josh and I are kind of in the same stage.
Yeah.
But so we'll talk about so Ben, you have 3 daughters. Mm-hmm. How old are they?
6, 4, and 2.
So you're like in the heat at the moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then Malachi, how many kids do you have?
No kids.
Oh,
no
Malachi
kids.
doesn't have any kids.
No
Malachi's
kids.
pretty newly married.
Yeah.
How old are you, Malachi?
28.
28. How old are you, Ben?
32.
32. Okay. And Josh, you have 3 kids.
I have 3 children.
Yeah.
My oldest is 20. My middle one is 18, and my youngest is 14.
Yeah.
Girl, boy, girl.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is is building family culture. We may find a different phrase to use, but that's the way that I would describe it. So I wanted to hear some stuff from the guy who is future casting of what with kids. But I mean, you're already building family culture.
Yeah.
I
I've
mean,
been married for about 3.5 years. And
Yeah. So you're not future casting, but you're building foundation big time for when you do have kids. And then Ben is right in the heat of it. So just different stages. But before we do that, I wanted to. So Josh, I don't think these guys know that you used to be the assistant.
Assistant to
the editor of a small regional publication that I used
vaguely remember
put
that.
together.
It was called the Arkansas Bear and Buck Journal. It was a very classy publication.
How about that?
Hey,
man.
listen. One day
Two pages in the journal.
One day I was building this magazine. I mean, I published the magazine. I mean, like I didn't have a boss, and we were going to print like that day or something, and I was like, it'd be funny to put Josh's name in there. So I put Josh's name in like right beneath mine. And our other buddy, Jonathan Rose. I put, Clay Newcomb, editor, publisher. Josh Spielmaker, Jonathan Rose, assistant editors. And then just went right down the line. Nobody ever said a word about it.
I did proofread a few articles back in my day.
Did you at least hang it up?
Jonathan Rose did.
Did you hang up the journal at least?
I think I still have some of them.
I mean, there's probably some right over there that have your name in it. Because once I did it, I never took it out.
That's hilarious.
You were
for how many years?
Well, we produced it for 5 years.
Yeah.
You are now liable.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So if you get an email, you know why.
Yeah.
The opinions expressed in the Arkansas Bear and Buck Journal do not reflect the opinions of Josh.
So Josh and I have been longtime friends. And Josh, I was trying to find a way to describe you, and I've got it perfect. I mean, because we have to be conscious of the sphere that we're inside of. And like people that are listening to this, for the most part, are hunters, for the most part. So, I'm kind of introducing you as like the hunting Josh. Okay.
Yeah.
So here, this would be like on your resume.
Okay.
There's only been one graduate of the Gary Newcomb Hunting School of Hard Knocks that graduated.
Yes.
And that would be me.
Right.
I'm the only one that graduated. Right. My brothers were both in the school.
They didn't make it.
They didn't make it. God love them. They're but if
I spent a few semesters.
No, well, listen. If Gary Newcomb had like a summer camp, if the Gary Newcomb School of Hunting Hard Knocks had a summer camp, you would have gone to the summer camp and like got the shirt and like went through it. Because for
Great
like the better part of on and off for 20 years, Josh has probably 14 of 20 years, 15 of 20 years. We've gone down and hunted with my dad down on public land in Southwest Arkansas. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah.
So you have some Gary Newcomb paraphernalia.
A significant portion of my hunting gear has come through Gary Newcomb, whether voluntarily or involuntarily.
Your bow,
my bow.
You're still sporting those Realtree camo.
Those Realtree camo pants that are
literally
half ripped up the leg now.
1995.
I stole his flashlight, his Streamlight flashlight, for about 3 years before I gave it back.
Yeah. So but Josh and I have hunted together. On the podcast you were on before, where we were talking about generational continuance, we were talking about raising kids. We told your famous story of the first day you bow hunted public land. You killed a deer.
Yeah, I tried to keep it a secret from you, but you spotted the dime-sized spot of blood on my boots from like 2 miles away as you drove up to get me.
Yeah. So we won't go into the full story, but Josh killed a deer the first day he ever sat in a tree stand bow hunting. Wow. And he drags early in the morning. It was
like
before
10 minutes
cell
after
phones.
daylight.
Heck, we didn't have cell phones or anything. So it was like I was going to come pick him up at 11, and so he killed this deer at like 6:45 a.m. So he drags the deer out to the road and goes to sleep.
Off the road, kind of off the road. Yeah.
Yeah, like
and he used it for a pillow and took about a 2-hour nap.
That'd be nice.
And he wakes up and there are buzzards surrounding him.
Oh, wow.
So these buzzards were like dang,
Jackpot.
we got a pretty big old boy and a deer. They were like, well, I don't know what happened there, but something happened. And so they landed and were like about probably to peck his eyeballs out when he woke up.
Yep.
And then you had turkeys walk by
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
So,
It's a pretty exciting morning.
So yeah, and then and we've had it on and off together. I mean, you've coon hunted with me. You've done quite a bit of stuff with me.
Turkey hunting is always an enjoyable time.
Yeah, David killed a turkey with us, and we've youth turkey hunted. Yeah, so we have, awesome. So in Malachi, you didn't know this, but Malachi, I'm gonna dial this in here in a minute here.
Okay.
So Malachi is an Arkansas licensed hunter.
Oh yeah, it's real serious. I'm up for renewal in end of June. The 1 year coming up on my 1 year anniversary.
Yeah,
it's real serious.
So this is your first Arkansas hunting license that you've ever bought, though.
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah,
Grew up in Texas.
Grew up in Texas.
Yeah, but you did a little bit of hunting in Texas, but you wouldn't call yourself a hunter.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
I did a little varmint hunting back in like elementary school with like a little 410.
Yeah,
going out shooting varmints with my friend and his dad.
In Midland, Texas.
In Midland, Texas, yep. And then did a little quail and dove hunting.
Hometown of George.
Hometown of George
Bush.
W.
Yep.
W.
I don't think I knew that.
Hometown of George. See, his dad, George H., did his oil business there. And that's how he got his money. And then the son was, I don't know if George W. was born there, but I knew he went to elementary school there. And so that's how Midland got famous.
How big is Midland?
When I left Midland, it was about 200,000. Now it's close to about 300,000 or 400,000.
Where are the people coming from?
They had a big oil boom, money. Yeah, back when a couple of years ago, maybe Midland was like the biggest producer in oil.
Did you know that I heard George H.W. Bush say one time that the difference between him and George,
W. You talking about the dad or the son?
Okay. George W. is the son.
The son,
Yes.
yeah.
George W. said the difference between him and his dad was Midland, Texas.
Yeah.
Because George W. was kind of like this, kind of folksy, kind of, like, I don't know. Not
Country boy.
Yeah, country boy.
True Texan, yeah.
Yeah, kind of Texan. And George H. was like a rich boy from the north somewhere.
Yeah.
A little more polished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
W.
Yeah.
Yeah. Midland, Texas is my hometown.
So I want to say to you though that you're qualified to call yourself a hunter if you wanted to.
And why is that? Because
Well,
I have the
because-
card?
No.
Or because I've shot?
I mean, just you went hunting.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, and you've hunted with me.
Yeah. We have coon hunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, he bought his license because we were going to try to go duck hunting this
Yeah.
year. But it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But did y'all know that I tried to get Malachi to go in with me and buy a boat?
Hold on. Hold on.
That's why I wanted to publicly ask him why he didn't want to go in with me and buy a boat.
Hold on. Listeners, listen to me. Clay and I were talking one day, and we were talking about we had fried some fish. We came over here and had a fish fry, and he was like, "Man, it's so nice to go out and catch fish, come back home and cook it." And it was like, "Yeah, let's do more fishing." Okay, so I'm thinking I'm gonna go get a fishing pole, and we're just gonna go out to the creek to do a little fishing. The next text message from Clay Newcomb: "What do you think about going in on a boat?" And I'm thinking, like, you just want to rent a boat or go out for the weekend?
That escalated
And then he's
quickly.
like, no, let's. I'm talking about buying the boat. It's like, I just want some fishing poles and a couple of fish every once in a while. I don't want to buy a boat.
You know how, like, when you're texting somebody and they, like, respond back, like, hey, man, what are you doing? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Go back and forth. And then you ask this question and there's, like, silence. And you're like, and for, like, the first 5 minutes, you're like, he must have just set his phone down. And then after like 30 minutes, you're like, he probably went for a run.
Yeah.
And then after an hour, you're like, he's not happy with what I said.
Was it something I said?
when Malachi and I, multiple times we fried fish together. And I can tell the man likes to fry fish. We kind of enjoy like cooking for our wives, doing that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, I got a friend that wants to catch fish. And so anyway, I messaged him. I was like, hey, you want to go out on a boat?
He went from like 0 to like 100 real
Clay
quick.
doesn't do anything small, man.
Real quick.
So anyway, okay, at least now I know why you stiff armed me.
It's in love, though.
But okay, it offer still stands. Though. Offer still stands. We do need to go fishing. Okay, Benjamin Lagrone, man. Okay, now Ben has you have a long history of hunting, but not real. I mean, you're not super serious about it. How would you describe your hunting?
I would say I was really serious growing up. I've just since I've had 3 little kids, and the thought of trying to add that to my schedule is pretty daunting.
But you grew up in like deer camps and stuff with your dad
so I grew up
in Central Arkansas.
mainly deer hunting. The second highest thing I did was probably duck hunting, but I did some squirrel, a little bit of turkey, quail, and all that. But yeah, I grew up hunting in deep South Arkansas, and for most of my childhood, man, we had a pretty primitive camp. It was roughing it, and that made me pretty battle hardened, I think. And
In a good way.
In a good way. Like I knew what it meant to sacrifice for the kill. I mean, I knew hunting was work,
Yeah.
and we scouted, we tended to the land, like we did. It was hard work. And then I remember probably like maybe when I was a teenager, my dad we kind of got tired of the primitive camp, and we joined this membership of it was a luxurious, to our standards, a luxurious deer camp. We're like, this is awesome. Like you can actually go indoors. I mean, our old camp, it was just like a lean-to we'd eat in, around the fire. And that was like the Ritz, man. And it was actually a cool deal because it was a lease, but there was somebody that owned some land and lived there all year long, like right next to the lease. That was really great because we leave our stuff and it was always safe. And they were always kind of like keeping their eyes open on how the deer are moving and stuff. But that was most of my most cherished childhood memories were deer hunting with my dad. And then in high school, my best friend started taking me duck hunting. And I really loved that. Built a lot of great memories with him and his dad, who recently died of cancer a few years ago. And but so that's one of my cherished memories with him was duck hunting, and they duck hunted near Stuttgart, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you do have a rich history inside of hunting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Y'all may not know it as much, but like South Arkansas, there's not as much public land. So there's the hunting lease culture is pretty strong. Like you got it, and it's affordable. It's not like, I mean, there are certainly big leases down in South Arkansas that are incredibly expensive, like more expensive than you could imagine. But I mean, like a lot of leases that, just a working man could afford to get into. So anyway, but like up here, you can't hardly find a hunting lease. Like in Northwest Arkansas, if you were to ask me where a hunting lease you could join is, I wouldn't know where to tell you to go. But it's probably because there's quite a bit of public land around here, so people can go hunt public land and do okay. But now, what I always say is that, so in what's happening right now with the hunting world is that hunter recruitment is a massive, massive issue. So technology, transportation, the opportunity inside of a prosperous nation, opportunity just gives people so many options for what they do with their spare time. And for 99% of people, hunting is an option for what to do when they have spare time. And prosperity creates options. And so what has happened, the peak hunting numbers in the United States were in the early 1980s. And I think we had like 16 million hunters, but the population was like 225 million people. So that was like, I can't remember the percentage. Somebody could do the math. But essentially
16, 18%.
Something like that. And so like that's actually a pretty fair number.
That's wrong.
About half that.
Listeners, that's wrong. Yeah, it's half that.
Okay, somewhere around 10%, wasn't it?
Below 10%.
Yeah. 18%.
So what has happened now is that we have 11 million licensed hunters in the U.S., but the U.S. population is 330 million. So when you're talking about a democratic society where people vote, like even though, I mean, losing 5 million hunters is massive, but what's equally as massive is that the population, we've not had a healthy growth with the population. And so I say to like Malachi, buying a hunting license is significant.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, in the state of Arkansas, he has done as much for conservation as I have. I mean, really. And so, like, just buying a hunting license. I mean, like, buy your spouse a hunting license for no reason other than just as a gift, as a donation to conservation, because those hunting.
I've never thought about that before, Clay, because I buy a hunting license every year, but really to help make a difference, you could buy family members. It's a great
Absolutely.
way to.
I mean, if all the licensed hunters in Arkansas just said, you know what, I'm going to buy somebody a hunting license,
It would double.
I mean, obviously you want those people to participate in hunting, but even if they didn't, you've doubled the revenue, and all that money is ear tagged to go back into the state organizations that are doing work for conservation in every state. The other way that money comes in, and that's not what this podcast is about, but is buying hunting equipment through the Pittman Robertson money that like is the tax money that comes from firearms. All you guys are into firearms, big time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And man, the ammunition that you're buying is specifically earmarked for conservation.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I didn't know
Pittman
that either.
Robertson excise tax. Oh, firearms users and hunters are the ones who are funding conservation in this country.
You're welcome,
And so,
America.
Yeah, you're welcome, America. And that's the problem. So it's not just that, like I'm a hunter and I want my culture to persist through time. Like that's part of it. Like this kind of emotional, cultural connection to hunting that like I want my great grandkids, should the earth persist, live through and see. No, there's real tangible value to hunters being on the landscape because they fund conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So less hunters means less wild places, means less wildlife. And that's kind of a hard pill for some people to understand. But that's not why we're here, though, boys. What I want to talk about is, man, unprecedented times we live in, is it not?
Yeah.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Absolutely unprecedented times. And and we're talking about the coronavirus. We're talking about just the political instability. We're talking about, the chaos of riots and looting. And we're not going to get into the details of that. But to me, what I want to do, and I think the base level instinct of pretty much any family, any person, any head of home, husband, wife, is going to want to do is stabilize their families inside of times of instability.
Yeah.
I mean, that whether you are, I don't care where you're from, that is the innate desire of parents, of families, whether you're religious, whether you're not religious, whether you live in China, whether you live in New Zealand, whether you live in the United States, whether you live in the urban center of New York City, whether you live in Newton County, Arkansas, you have this innate desire to stabilize your family. And times of crisis, times of instability, shaking, shake that. And people could be like, I'm not shaken by this. You are a little bit. I mean, has my life really been affected? We've eaten just as much food, probably more. We've, we've not cinched down the financial belt. I figure we've probably, life has been pretty normal for us. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you're starved out of food but life is different. life is different than it was. And we have to walk our families. I feel like as leaders of homes, and when I say that, you can hear me say that a lot. I mean, I'm talking about husbands and wives, parents, navigating family through all this stuff is significant. But so the foundation to that, though, the ability to ride a mule through a rough spot in the mountain doesn't come when you get to the rough spot in the mountain. It started in the round pen when you were training it. A long, long time ago, the foundations of that animal's connection to the rider, the rider's connection to know what that animal's going to, you see what I'm saying? So it's like Christ tests us, all this tests us. So what we're talking about is building family culture. Building family culture. And all you guys, I respect all of you for the way that you have built your families. And I think nobody's doing everything right. I mean, that the word right is a tough one, but we're doing it intentionally. And I know all you guys well enough to know that you're very intentionally building family culture. And if you don't hear anything else on this podcast, and you're just listening to this and like you just want to chew on something, my question to you is, are you being intentional with the way that you're building your family? And that word building could throw you off. And let me say this right here, is that, or I've got a couple of written statements here. Let's see. We research and consult almost everything that we want to be proficient at. Do we not?
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're going to go on a big hunting trip, you're going to learn about it. If you want to get into cycling, like you go to cycling experts and see what they say.
Right.
But with family stuff, a lot of times people are really isolated. Why do you think that is?
I think it can be perceived as weakness to have to rely on on advice or counsel from someone else to build your own family.
Yeah.
When you see, someone who's proficient at hunting and you see, I like to fly fish. And so, I watch other guys. It's like, well, they've had a long history of this and I want to glean from them. But when it comes to your own family, it's a really sensitive spot because you don't want to be seen as weak.
Yeah.
Or there's the other side of you get isolated because you don't want to build like mom and dad, or you don't want to follow their pattern.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to find my own way. And so it's almost a comparison of, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to do it my own way.
Yeah.
And that can make you isolated.
Yeah. I think we as people a lot of times are insecure, and to open ourselves up for somebody else's input, that's pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it takes time of doing that a lot that you learn the value of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, the more I open up my life to input, the better my life gets. The more I learn, the better my marriage gets. And so I remember even early on in my marriage, and then same with early on when I first had kids, like maybe like the first time I kind of like went to maybe one of you guys or, people older than me that have been married longer, had kids longer. I remember it was almost like, what are they going to say? And like, what if I'm doing everything wrong? And
what if I'm invalidated by what they say? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then every time that I did go to people wiser than me, I always got two things. I always got, number one, they related to me. I've never had an issue in my family or marriage. Somebody was like, you struggle with that? Oh my gosh. Like, you're a terrible person. Like, you have a marital struggle? Are you serious? It's like everything. It's almost like my friends would like fill in the sentence. Oh yeah. And I bet you said this after you did that. Yep, that's it. And then I bet you felt like this. And, And so that was one, that right there is comforting.
Yeah.
And it shows you that it's safe. And then the second thing.
Because you're looking at somebody that you perceive has made it through that, and you're like, well, they're okay.
Yeah.
And they had this problem. Yeah.
And then the second thing is I've always from that received an alternative perspective that I didn't have before.
Yes.
And it's like every single time I learned that I can't do this on my own, and I know I'm jumping right into all this, but like, that's one thing I learned with building my family is like, there ain't no way I can do this on my own. So all
that's not weakness.
Exactly. So I think it's like this double-edged sword. It's like we're kind of insecure, but we kind of want to do it on our own. But at the same time, that's really hard. So we ended up just kind of I think people either just feel like a failure or they just kind of build up. They kind of just say, well, this is how I am and this is the way my family's going to be forever, not really getting to experience what could be better.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty American cultural thing to be really independent with your family. I mean, just, cultures are built based upon national history.
Yep.
I mean, and like you think about the people that like settled in this region or heck, every region of this country, unless they're Native Americans, they came here and there was like this pioneer spirit that was on people to like bust through the wilderness and make it on their own. People had to be self-sufficient. And like here in the Ozarks, that is a trait that is honored, self-sufficiency. I mean, like at the Newcomb farm, we hat tip to the idea of self-sufficiency, big time. That's okay. But that cannot be the definer of every part of your life or you're a fool. So like, yeah, we like to hunt some of our own food, butcher our own animals, grow some stuff, train our, But when it comes to things that I am not an expert on, that I'm incapable, well, anybody can have insight into their family and make decisions on their own. We're not suggesting that somebody is incapable of making decisions on their own.
No.
But what I'm saying is best practice inside of life is for people to be connected inside of some network of people that they trust, that they're getting input. And so, I mean, that was just my point, is that like all this other stuff, we're happy to go to YouTube and ask people and da-da-da-da-da. But when it comes to family, don't talk to me about my family.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It is weird.
It's just, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And so, family culture, I would describe it as the values, the philosophy, and the structure to the way that your family lives its life. And that culture holds the keys to how your family, air quotes, will turn out.
Yeah.
I mean, like, man, we live inside of a dynamic space as humans that live in the earth. Like, man, we are but a flake of dirt that has had life breathed into us.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it is a facade. I mean, the human experience is such a facade. I mean, like, it's so easy for us to look at our grandparents who are deceased, and it's like, man, there was a time when they were 29 and they were 40 and they were at the peak of their life, and now they're gone. It's like, we will be like that.
Yeah.
We have this short period of time in the earth, and we're constantly projecting forward. We're projecting forward, like how our children will, what will our children do? Are we equipping our children so they can go out and be successful in the future environment that we don't even know what it is? I'm projecting into my marriage every single day. I'm doing things consciously or unconsciously or consciously that is sowing seed into my relationship with my wife 5 years from now. I say that to young married guys is don't expect things to get on a 5-year plan inside your marriage. Start doing stuff today that in 5 years, your wife is going to trust you more. And because it takes a while to change stuff sometimes. But the very nature of raising children means that we're investing in them with the hope of a return on that investment. Not for us to gain back, but just like I don't want my kids to not be able to be, whole humans, And here's the crux is that no human is void of values, philosophy, and culture. Like, so everyone has values and everyone displays those values. And every human life creates a vacuum that's filled with a value system. So you could be like, I don't have a value system. I don't want to have a value system. Well, you just told me your value system.
Yeah.
I mean, really, a human life creates a space that it has no option but to be filled with values, culture, and philosophy for life. Like so if you, and I mean that gets right down into, what would be an example of well, I've got here, the question is, how intentional is it?
Yeah.
Lots of people, people that have built their life very unintentionally.
Yeah.
And you also know people that have built their life very intentionally.
Right. It's pretty obvious.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's not just by chance. It's not just by luck. It's from intentional. And so when we use the word building, like we use that word a lot, building. It's like, I'm building family culture.
Yeah.
And that for me is like, and I know for you guys as well. It doesn't mean that like we have like Newcomb family school every day.
Yeah.
No, we're just living our life.
Yeah. That's when I was thinking about this the other day. One of my first memories of Clay was not with Clay. It was with his kids, because I used to teach at the school that his kids went to.
Yeah.
And I can remember his kids like bringing in like bear fat to tell what the weather's going to be, or bringing in like skins of coon and raccoons and foxes and stuff like that. And I remember that standing out because all the kids did it. And what it was showing me, it was like, hey, they like to hunt and they value kind of giving back to conservation, and it just really stood out to me because I got a flavor of who Clay was through its kids. And I knew it's like, that's something he was intentionally building inside of his home.
Yeah. Yeah. What would be an example of values? Because I sometimes those words like values, philosophy, and culture, like what would be an example of like family values?
I think openness. I would say for me, one would be openness. I've only been married for 3.5 years. And in our first year, one of the things that we always did, we called it Nichols family hours. Like every week, once a week, we sat down and we just talked about the hard stuff. What was hard inside the home? What was frustrating? What things? And that really did build a pattern inside of our marriage where if we're frustrated, we talk about it. Yeah. Right? If we had a hard day, we talk about it. It's something that our spouse was doing that was irritating us. We talked about it. And so we value communication and openness. Yeah. And I knew if I didn't do that at the beginning, it wouldn't be built, right? Because I'm just not naturally open. I just don't naturally talk.
That's something you had to work at.
Yeah, something I had to work at.
You had to develop that muscle inside of you. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And so the opposite of that would be, if you didn't communicate, you would actually be building a value of non-communication.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, this isn't like, I think I'll have some values. It's like, no, you've got values.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got philosophy. You've got culture. Just, are you doing it on purpose?
Yeah.
And the expression of that to your children, whether you say it or not, you can tell a family that's not open and communicative because the children have the attitude of, we can't talk about that. You know what I mean? You can see it on a kid when they have frustrations, when they, we just bottle that up and move on.
Yeah.
That whole thing about openness, the opposite I think is like privacy, and that's a value in our culture as well in America. The independence, the privacy, you're your own person. And if you let your kid retreat and not talk about something, or in your marriage, if you just decide there's just places we don't go in our conversation, then you are establishing a value system, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying earlier about projecting is so important, because that can sound good in the short term of like privacy and just respect people. And sometimes you got to give people space, and we know as married people you got to give each other space sometimes. But if you project to the future, you got to be aware of what that's going to build over time. And I think this whole thing about you value something, whether it's this or that, there's no such thing as no value system. I think if you become just aware of that reality, you're ahead of the game on 90% of humans on the earth, because most people kind of go through autopilot, just kind of cruising along, doing whatever they think or feel.
Yeah.
And that awareness is just super key, and it's super practical. It's not always like deep stuff. Like most people, when they talk about values, they think of like integrity, honesty, and that's true. Those are important, but it's the simple stuff too. Like in my family, we value routine. Like we have a pretty solid routine, and that's just kind of how we roll. But at the same time, my wife and I have talked about it. Like sometimes we need to be more flexible, because like the opposite of routine would be flexibility. And we've looked at our life and sometimes how we get stressed out, and we'll be like, we need to be more flexible. We're teaching our kids not to be flexible. We're teaching them to be controlling and, routine based. Because me and my wife, we're like big planners. We like everything planned out. So sometimes Jessica and I will purposely do something to like jack up our routine so that our kids
on purpose blow it up.
Yeah, exactly. So our kids know that mom and dad are free sometimes, and
they see your response to that.
And see my response. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not always, again, this deep stuff like integrity and compassion, which those are great, but it's sometimes just like, how do you perceive your own day-to-day life? That's your value system.
Yeah, that's good. I use this word philosophy, like, family, like every family would have a philosophy. I'm trying to define what that would be. And I thought of an example. Like, we have a philosophy that short-term gain for long-term, short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. I mean, that's a philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's like, you got to clean your room, you got to do this, and then you can go do this. Or, whether it's my son who loves playing basketball, it's like, he's building. He really takes it serious, very disciplined, and we like that. So, I'm trying to define what these things would be. So values, philosophy, and then culture. So here's the question: why would somebody even care? I mean, maybe, a lot of these things people do by default and don't even realize it, and maybe you're doing good stuff.
Yeah.
So that's very possible. Like there's some people that just kind of have, are doing stuff, maybe not intentionally, but still they have some good stuff happening. But I a well-ordered life and family gives a person options. Like to me, like, and not to take this back to hunting, like hunting is like the ultimate goal for every person that's listening inside of this. Hunting is just a facet of my life, but this is a hunting podcast where we're giving people, we're talking about it. But like, if your family and your relationships in your life are the foundational platform that everything in your life stems from.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. And so if your family and your relationships is chaos or unordered, or, there's something crazy going on, that's not the best way to describe it. You are not going to be able to have the liberty to do what you want to do. Yeah. I mean, the way I've said it is when you have your value system in order, then all the things beneath that you're able to really give yourself to. Like, I've really been able to give myself to hunting for the last, most of my life, but really the last 15 years. And there's a direct connection between that and having a family that was in order. Because, if it was causing so much friction in my marriage, like, I wouldn't be able to do what I do,
Yeah.
And so, and just like even in your job, I mean, it's like if you're not building family culture, you're going to have a hard time being successful really at anything that you do, And I think there's part of this conversation is just hopefully going to help people just hear a different conversation about it, because there's little things that can be done wherever anyone is at, little things that can be done. And that's powerful stuff. I kind of broke this down thinking about like internal family culture and then external family culture, and the two being like kind of like internal value systems, but then there's external family culture like hunting, like you describing my kids 10 years ago, bringing stuff to school. Like that would be to me like external family culture. Like we value hunting, we value this, but the internal stuff starts at the top, and family culture is primarily built behind closed doors in decisions that nobody sees.
Yeah.
I love that about life, is that there's some things that you can't fake, you know? I mean, and that's the crazy part of the world we live in, is like with social media and stuff, people can put off a perception of themselves, but you can't fake out reality, you know?
Yeah.
And so a statement that I have here is that, you know, the power to proclaim a standard only holds the power when the proclaimer lives out those standards.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that falls back on to me and to us, is that like inside of our families, like if we can't ask our kids to do something that we're not willing to do.
The old classic line of "do as I say, not as I do" does not work.
It just doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work. So you can't build something that's not inside of you already, you know? And so that's where the personal responsibility of all this is cool, because, you know, we can clean up our own selves, you know?
It really is the entry point, Clay. I mean, that's the entry point for a value system is through whoever leads it. And so your value system is not going to be built by your children. It's not going to be built accurately through your wife. It's going to be built through you as the head of your home. You know, and that's the way we've done it in our houses. You know, I've got to have enough sight to say, this is what my family needs and this is what my wife needs. And then, you know, my wife, Christy, and I, we work really closely together to partner and produce things in our children's lives. And that doesn't happen without us identifying it. You know, what do we want to build in our home? Because if we can't write it down, it's not going to be built right. If we can't articulate it, it's not going to be built right. So as we talk and as we think of systematic ways to implement those things in our family and in our kids, and, you know, for us to say what's important, what do we want for our children? Where were the shortcomings in our own lives where we want to invest in our kids to give them something better? And I think probably if you've listened to this podcast this far in, you have that same desire, is to give your children something.
What do you want to say to all the guys that aren't listening anymore?
But you probably have a desire to give your children something even better than you had. And so, you know, I think that identification of those things and then implementing it in your own life to give your children something to model. Kids need something. Kids are imitators, you know.
Yep.
What they see is what they do. So right now what they're seeing is they're seeing things on Facebook. They're seeing things on TV. They're seeing things in athletes. They're seeing things in all these different areas that will define them if you don't take your rightful place as their parents. So I unfortunately, in our society these days, we have a lot of parents that have forgotten what it means to be a parent.
Yeah.
And they're letting other people and other things and other influences be parents for their children.
Yeah.
So,
and aside to that is also that you don't wait till you have kids to start building culture.
That's right, Malachi.
Exactly.
Right? You even if you're a single guy, it's like you start now of building your values. Even my wife and I, we don't have kids, but we started when we said I do.
Yeah.
Building values that we want to be transferred into our children, and it starts now. It doesn't hurt if you've never thought about it and you have kids. Start today.
Right?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
you have to have. I like what Josh said. It's us. It's my wife and I. You sit down and that's one thing that we've tried to build inside of our home is the aspect of team. Right.
Yeah.
We're not competing against each other.
Right.
I'm not counting how many times you're washing the dishes. It's like we're a team. We're building one thing, and that's the Nichols culture. That's the Nichols family. That's the things we have articulated and the things we want to see built in our children. Let's build it now.
Yeah.
That way, when we have children, there's already a pathway for them to step into, and they can learn the ways and see the ways. I think that's important. It's not just hear our values or hear the culture, but it's seeing it being displayed. I think that's an important thing.
Because it's the foundation. Marriage.
Yeah.
A family is just a set of relationships, right? And that first relationship is that marriage.
Uh-huh.
I like, Josh, when you talked about, giving them this gift, like, which is, you're talking about like modeling these values. One of the greatest gifts you can give your kids is an example of a healthy, functional, good marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they ain't going to find many examples in the media today. And that's one of the greatest sources of joy in life.
Yeah.
It's the greatest source of hard work. And, but it's a great source of joy. And I want my kids to, when they become adults, to know what that looks like and be excited for that. And so, you said at the beginning of Malachi setting the foundation because he didn't have kids yet. It's like, that's exactly right. Like, I remember in our marriage, first couple of years were rough, man. It was intense. And we worked some things out for sure. And
I used to drive by the Lagrone's house. You could hear it from the
It was like a cartoon that the roof would jump up and down.
That's good. That's good. But we came through that different people and so much more patient, so much more tolerant, so much more in love because we chose to deal with those things head on. And it's never too late for that. It's like we still have issues come up just like any marriage, but we built a culture. We're talking about culture. The culture in my home is like we deal with it. It might not happen overnight, but we deal with it. We might have to bring in some help or talk to some people, but we're going to deal with it. Yeah. And therefore, like my kids don't have to live with that. What some kids might deal with, which is the awkwardness of that tension in that relationship, because that's a weird thing to cohabitate with. Two people that struggle in that. So I think that's a big time gift we can give to our children is an example of good marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's good. So much good stuff here. I'm trying to, I want to give it, I guess people, sometimes I hear stuff and I want people to be more specific. I'm not talking about you guys, but like really map out, exactly what we're talking about. What is family culture? But I think we've given some good examples in here of what it is. But ultimately, strong leadership inside a family is rooted inside of a balanced person that really loves the people that they're close to. Mm-hmm.
And is willing to sacrifice for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like my kids are getting older. My oldest daughter's 18 and I couldn't be more proud of the human that she is. And man, if there's one thing that I could say is that relationship with your kids, authentic relationship with them is so powerful. And that's what has made, my kids, and they're not perfect. We're working with all of them on different stuff all the time. So don't hear me say that they're perfect, but just that relationship, and that relationship means we can talk about anything. We do talk about anything. There's nothing that's off the table. And that didn't start when they were 14. Mm-hmm. That started when they were 3.
Yeah.
That they had a healthy view of who we were. They had a healthy view of our love for them. And we made plenty of mistakes. Man, that's the beautiful thing about it. Is you can make a lot of mistakes in your kids and your family still work out right if things are built in because relationship is very robust. Mm-hmm. Real human relationship is robust. Mm-hmm. Like, man, even anthropologically, human culture started as these like bands of nomadic people. The bands of nomadic people that were successful. And if we take it right back down to biology, biological success means that you produce viable offspring. Okay, you produce children that are able then to reproduce. If we're just talking like biological success, well, the people that knew how to leverage community relationships were the ones that were biologically successful. Stragglers were picked off by wolves.
Yep.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
There was there's all this study about like the traits that have made people like biologically successful. But I just say all that to say, well, I've lost my train of thought. Doggone it, I was getting into the anthropology of it all. I was drifting back to the Bering Strait.
Got in the weeds and got tripped up.
Yeah, I was in the Bering Strait, imagining
Crossing
people
over.
crossing over. But no. Just it's deep inside of us to want to connect to community.
Yeah.
You know, it's deep inside. Like to leverage the strength of human relationships is powerful. And I always say this, man, the very foundation of hunting is provision for the people that person values. Like, that's why I think hunting, it's so bizarre that in this day and age that there are people that say hunting is not something that should exist or they don't understand it. Like, hunting is essentially a key definer, a diagnostic definer of what it means to be human. Projectile points, making tools and weapons to kill animals, to procure protein, to bring it back to your family is a diagnostic thing that says, oh, that's a human and not a giraffe.
Yeah.
Really, diagnostic, the word diagnostic would mean like nothing else does that. Like if it has that trait, then it is this. Nothing else is making stone points. Nothing else is making slick trick broadheads. Nothing else is making 300 Win Mag shells. That is diagnostic, and I like to bring the hunting thing back to kind of this original narrative because it is true. Like, my family eats wild game. I go out, harvest wild game, bring it back to my family, provide for them healthy meat. And in a way, it's a metaphor for leadership, for provision. It's a metaphor for the way that I want my life to be for them. I want my kids and my wife to be able to say, I receive resource from this guy because he's my protector. He's my shade. He's my help. And I mean, I do the same thing with my wife is that to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know,
Clay, I was just going to say one of the things, just in communication with the listeners out there, just the difference between values and definers. We talk about definers like being a hunter and whatever you might be, versus values are things that are who a person is internally.
Yeah.
Integrity, honesty, hardworking, caring.
Right.
Those are the difference. You can't build a value system on what you do. It's who you are.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I tell you what, I've been thinking just while we're talking about links between all this and hunting, and I realized that one of the biggest like family culture moments that really shaped us had to do with hunting. And this was a few years ago. I used to own a couple acres, and it backed up to 20 acres of woods. And I figured out, I was just kind of tromping around there and found some signs, some deer sign. I was like, this is cool. There's deer back in here. Figured out who owned the land. And she was like, this developer lived in Florida and just didn't care. She's like, yeah, sure, you can hunt on it, whatever you want. And this was a few years ago. I think I only had 2 kids, and they were real young. And I hadn't hunted in a while because I moved up here and didn't have anywhere to go. So I was like, this could be the resurrection of my hunting career.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember that.
yeah. It's like 20 acres behind my house. Nobody's really hunting it. So I was like, I'll put
The
up
resurrection.
the
of Ben
resurrection.
Lagrone's hunting career.
So I put a game camera up, and lo and behold, there were 2 bucks regularly through there. One of them was very large. Both of them were shooters. One of them was very large. And I was like, holy cow. got an automatic feeder up there, started tracking it more regularly. Because I did have limited time just working and taking care of kids. And I started investing more and more time out there. And when I say it's close, I mean, where I was going to put up the stand, I mean, it's probably just like 300 yards from my house or less. And so I was getting all ready to go. And then hunting season was about to start. And I was talking to my wife about it. She's real uneasy about it, of kind of like, yeah, I guess I'll like watch the kids during those mornings and evenings all the time, because
she hadn't probably eaten much wild game either, had she, at that time?
No, she wasn't a huge fan of it.
Okay.
But she knew it was important to me, you know. And so like she let she let me go in a sense. But I remember I just remember when it was finally time to like sit on the stand and go out there and hunt, it just felt off, man. It just felt off. It felt like, man, it seemed like destiny, you know, the land, the buck. I mean, it was like perfect. Everything was perfect. And for plenty of guys and families, that might have been perfect, you know, but something felt off. And I remember coming back and just telling her, and she's like, aren't you going to hunt? I was like, I don't know. It just feels off. I don't know if this is the season for me. And I think right now, while the kids are little, like, I think I'll stay here. And it was like this massive weight off of her lifted. She was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you did that. And it meant so much to her. And it wasn't even like I was doing it just for her. It was like, it just felt off. I can't describe it.
Right.
And that sacrifice, which was a sacrifice at first, it hurt. It was like, golly, because, you know, I was so close.
Right.
What was a sacrifice turned into being a reward, because I've built so many great memories with my kids, and there was never this, from what was right for me was not trying to like 2-time it. Like, I'm going to try to like fit in the time with the girls and get to my hunting in. It's just like, it's not the season for it. And I know someday it will be. And I know someday that will be right. And my oldest daughter, I've already got her interested in hunting. She's about ready to go. She's already into fishing and stuff. I'm really excited. And that'll be a whole different dynamic, because it's building memories.
Well, that's that short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Exactly.
Like, you know, there'll be a time when it's right. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because people need to understand timing. You know, like people, like especially people that are inside of like social media, Instagram. I mean, you're gonna see all these people posting all this stuff that they're doing, and you just think, it's the time. You know, I got to get out there.
Yeah,
man. I didn't hunt like I hunt now when I was at Ben's stage.
Yeah,
I didn't, and that's the difficulty of social media or comparison. You know, of like, and that's where families can get messed up. And that's where, you know, I don't ever want like my influence to get people to do something, which I'm constantly trying to get people to hunt. Like, that's what I do. But people have to take it and then put it back up against their life and say, does this fit? And everybody has a different amount that it fits. And so when Malachi Nichols felt the Clay Newcomb push against his family, he was
get
like,
a boat.
No, we ain't getting a boat.
It is true. It is true. And I think that kind of brings up, if you're looking for a tool of how you could build culture inside of your family, it's what Ben said of like, he talked to his wife and a weight was released. And inside of my life is like a tool to know, is this the way to go, is communicating with my wife.
Yeah.
If like, are we in agreement?
Oh, so Lindsay was the one that said no. I'm throwing my papers in here.
Like, are we in agreement in building this and this is
absolutely.
direction? So I think that's to combat the media and the thing that is trying to push you and pull you to go in a certain direction. Is your team, is your home unit in agreement? Is this is the way we should go? And I think that's a powerful tool to navigate
absolutely
building life and navigate timing.
You use, and that's a good. I'm glad you said that word. You use different things to build family culture. You use like I use hunting as a tool to build values inside my family. I use hunting as a mechanism to build relationship with them. I mean, I spend a ton of time with my kids hunting and in hunting related stuff. If they were doing other activities, we would not spend the arm's reach time together that we do. So it's like I'm using that as a tool.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you just got to see if it fits. Is this a tool to really build something into my family? And I've said this before, like there's this narrative in the hunting community, you know, take your kid hunting and you're going to have this like great kid. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Hunting is not going to save your kid.
No.
If you have a really strong relationship with your kid and you use hunting as a vehicle for human relationship, then yes, it's going to help your kid. And that's what I've tried to do. And people can do that with a lot of different stuff. But, you know, for this context, we're talking about some hunting, but using it as a tool.
Yeah, I was thinking about this whole thing of sacrifice too, and talking with our spouses now, because I've really shown Jessica, like, I'll sacrifice anything for my family. Like if I was to go to her and be like, hey, so and so wants to go hunting that weekend, you know, what do you think? She'd be like, go, man. It's like she wants to share in that joy because I'm not always trying to do that.
Exactly.
You know, she trusts my heart and that I'm thinking of her first. You know, and on that note, I went hunting with my dad last fall and killed the biggest buck of my life. So it just kind of worked out.
Yes, you did.
So
hey, she likes wild game now, though, doesn't she?
She's slowly acquiring it.
Okay.
She's slowly acquiring.
Yeah.
Maybe don't start her out with possum.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I'll just say there's
Christy
Yeah.
likes deer meat.
Yeah. We use deer meat for everything.
Yeah.
Fajitas, chili.
Lindsay's cool with
Yeah, most of I would say all of my wild game eating has happened at the Newcomb farm.
Right.
And that is a true statement.
Yeah.
And all of her wild game eating has happened at the Newcomb farm, and we have been,
And
we have liked it. We still come back.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think I've said what I wanted to say. I mean, I just want people, if they don't remember anything or, well, what are we going to say to all the guys that aren't listening anymore?
Oh, we can talk bad about them because they're not listening.
They think they got it all figured out. Don't they?
I'll see you in 5 years.
No. We, you know, the time, usually on this podcast, we're talking to experts about hunting. Like, and that's what we like to talk about. That's what this context is designed for. But it just seems like with all the stuff going on, it was time to have a little bit more serious podcast. And if nothing else, just build your family intentionally. Don't wake up in 10 years and realize that there was something that, you know, you are building something right now. That's the main thing. You're building something. Make sure it's on purpose. And ultimately, you know, I was reading a book. Well, I'm going to say it before. Sometimes I start to say something and then realize there's a big backstory behind it that has to be said. I get into the backstory and I forget what I was originally going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it now.
Okay.
I'm doing it now. I read a book, real famous author from the 1800s, Stevenson, who wrote, I can't remember what he wrote, but I'm reading this book called Travels with a Donkey. It's a little bitty book written in like old English. And this guy said, he said a quote that I liked because it's true. I think it's true. He said that the reward of life is a man's friends.
Huh.
It was really beautifully written, and that's just, but he said the reward of life is a man's friends. And it's so true. And I've been saying it for a while, is that hunting would have little value if it weren't for friends that we could share stuff with.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
It really does. I mean, I don't care if you're like the biggest, baddest hunter on Instagram and you know, you receive a lot of stuff from your friends and even your haters. Like there's a lot of, so a lot of our value that we get from stuff happens from being able to share it, you know? and that's the way it's supposed to be. We're such and I think sometimes we miss that point, is that like we really ought to be experts at human relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's big success in a lot of areas of life.
It's the hardest wildlife to tame.
Yeah, it is. Well, we just did a podcast a few days ago with some biologists, and they said the guy said he said he had heard a biologist say, I use more of what I learned in the bar dealing with humans as a bartender. I'm not promoting bartending. Then he did use his wildlife biology degree. He's a wildlife biologist. You with me?
Yeah.
All the guys are just like half grinning, looking at me, going like, "What are you saying?" He was saying, as a wildlife biologist, he manages people more than he actually manages science of biology, dealing with people. Yeah,
that's right.
Closing comments, guys. What are your thoughts? Did we miss anything? I mean, what do we need to say? Are we done?
I think we want to. What I want to communicate is just, you're not alone. You need people.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that experience is something that someone can share. It's not just something that you have that you can't give away. And I think that we've had some good experience. We've made some bad decisions, but we've made some good decisions too. And for Clay and I, who our kids are getting older, we've seen the benefit of the sacrifices and the decisions that we've made, and watching Ben lead his girls, and you see the good fruit, and you see where there's decisions where you could have made that would have been better for them, and so we want to be able to share that with people, to know that there's a way to do it that really produces good fruit. My wife talks a lot about having kids is like having an orchard, and you plant and you fertilize and you water, and now our kids are getting to the age where we're just picking the fruit and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I think we want that for everybody out there, to really have a family that you can enjoy. There's nothing worse than not liking your own family, or would rather be somewhere else than with your own family,
or your close friends that won't go in with on a boat.
Yeah. Nobody wants a friend like that. But anyway, it's worth it. The investment is worth it. It's the best investment you can make.
Yeah. Closing thought?
Yeah, I was thinking about how when people talk about parenting, a lot of times the focus is on not just parenting but culture. The focus is on like behavior.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to say is that you are the family culture. It starts with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying you to like everybody, like, and me. It starts there, and before you can expect, because when you start, especially with small kids, you're like, how in the world do I get them to stop screaming their head off? You're like all these behaviors you want to fix. It's like, well, start with you and what you got to deal with. And I know that, and I shared this analogy with you the other day, but I just bought a puppy recently. He's a registered Brittany, beautiful dog. I'm really proud of him. Started training him. I'm not making him a bird dog. I'm just training him as a family pet. And I've trained dogs before. And
why didn't you get a squirrel dog?
Huh?
Why didn't you get a squirrel dog? Carry on. I'm just kidding.
Don't want to hurt your feelings.
I've been making Instagram posts about family pets. Go ahead.
I was actually going to bring him in here, but I thought he'd pee in your office, so I didn't want to do that. I thought about bringing him. He's sitting at home alone right now. But anyway, so I've trained dogs before. And when I was younger, I remember it was all about how do I get them to do blank? How do I get them to do that? But it was all about the behavior. And I was sharing this with you the other day of how it's like now that I've parented, it's like my perspective's totally different toward this dog. Like all I've been doing is like communicating to him that I care about him and that I'm his authority figure.
Yeah.
Almost just like, can I get this dog to know me and respect me? And it's just totally different. And it's like, and it's made the training easier because there's already a relationship. and that's why dogs. I love dogs is because they're relational with humans so much more than other pets. But I was like, golly, that's just like with my kids. Like I don't actually. To me, it's not really as important of their behavior as much as like, do they know my heart?
Yeah.
And so I've got to focus on that versus, trying to get them straightened up or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. Mr. Nichols.
I would say I'm a very practical guy, and I think you can hear this podcast and think, where do I start? Right? And you try to maybe take a big bite of, I'm going to build family culture. I think it's just starting just one decision. Like, what do you value? And focus on that for the next 2 months. It's like if you want to value communication, focus on being more communicative with your wife and with your children, right? If you want to value having a servant heart and serve people, focus on that for the next month or 2 months. It's not taking a big chunk of life and let me build family culture and family values, but it's just make one right decision each day. Make the next right decision. Make the next right decision. And then you'll wake up 10 years from now and you realize you've built something. Yeah. Right? And we as humans are naturally designed to build something, but it takes one step at a time.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks a ton. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Hey, I just want to say, too, you really know how to treat a podcast guest, too, with that breakfast this morning.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you treat all your podcast guests that way?
No.
Oh, wow.
Special.
All past podcast guests
Don't tell them.
Are like, breakfast was included? What?
Yeah. No, don't tell them. Don't tell them. All right, guys. Man, I'm trying to think. There was something I was going to. That's it. We're done. Keep the wild places wild, because that's where the bears live.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.